The time is just gone 16 minutes past 8 as we kick off this morning, taking a look at the SONA debate, the response by the opposition parties to Cyril Ramaphosa giving the State of the Nation address last week, Thursday. And this morning, we're joined by founding member of the National Freedom Party, the NFP, Ahmed Munzoor Shaik Emam. Ahmed Munzoor, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and welcome.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you, all our listeners out there. A lovely day in the city of Cape Town, but embarking on a journey to Gauteng shortly.
Well, inshallah, looking forward to you coming to Gauteng and nice and hot here. I must say it's a scorcher out here, although today a bit cooler. But we're certainly looking forward to you coming out to Gauteng. But let's get to the SONA and the speech of the president. The opposition parties having had their say in terms of responding to the State of the Nation address. Now, we've seen so much. Obviously, one of the big talking points is the president has become a storyteller, the story of Tin Swallow that he elaborated in quite a bit of detail, but also a number of other issues. And I mean, to the extent where we've seen even some opposition parties, one in particular, even scoring the president 10 out of 10 and calling for applause as well. And just looking at it from your perspective, you know, what you've heard from some of the opposition parties, but the NFP's position more specifically as far as the SONA debate goes.
Well, let me start off by saying, one needs to check first, was this a State of the Nation address or was this an election campaigning? In my view, to a very large extent, I think the president was campaigning for the election. However, I think the president has come back very strongly and done some damage control. I wouldn't give the president out of 10. What we did not share, yes, there are successes in the country, and we cannot deny that. What is important to note is that while there are weaknesses and challenges, and we know where we are 30 years into democracy, what are the solutions and what are you going to do differently from the previous 30 years in order to ensure we go onto the correct path to success and prosperity for South Africa? That is not what I have heard. And I'm going to give you a few examples. President talks about the ports. He's correct that from 60, you now have 20 ships waiting at any given time at the port. But that's not the true story. The reason for that is it's not a success. Many of these shipping companies have diverted their cargo to the neighboring ports, so we've lost that business. That's what the problem is. The second thing is, the president talks about skills that he wants to import into the country by the visa requirements for coming into South Africa. He wants to ease that. But the president is forgetting that we spend here hundreds of millions of rands, if not billions, educating people in skills. And those skills that we are educating them, funding them through taxpayers, are leaving the country. In other words, it's a benefit to the international community. So instead of rather creating our own skills, many of our skills are unemployed in the country or leaving the country, and you want to go and import skills. So we need to ask ourselves, again, what are we doing that we need to redirect so in order to ensure that we produce our own skills? Then takes you then to the quality of education. If you do not have the quality of education that we are supposed to provide, it's not about numbers, it should be about the quality. For that reason, you find 1 in 2 learners drop out school that started in grade 1, not finish grade 12. 60% of these learners drop out in grade 10. But more importantly, for those that make it to grade 12 and go to TVET colleges, another 60% drop out in the first year. Worse than that is those that make it there in the first year, 30% of them fail maths in the next year. Those are some of the things that the president is supposed to have dealt with. Now, 30 years into democracy, I expected him to say, what can we do differently to the number of people, just the city of Cape Town, 575,000 people on the waiting list for housing. Government does not have the capacity to provide these houses. What I was expecting him to say, and that is something that is achievable overnight. In every local government where South Africans live, including single parent family, subdivide the land that's available and give each and everyone their dignity back. Give them a piece of land and that paper. And then when you are able to provide the water, sanitation, and electricity on an annual basis, you do. That's the least you can do to address the very unequal society that we live in. He talks about corruption, and he talks about the 200 people that are being prosecuted. 1 billion rand later, nobody has been arrested yet. Nobody's inside. But more importantly, what do you think this elections, Brother Inayat, is all about? I can tell you without any doubt, all these political parties that are contesting, that are governing wherever, the monies that they are using for this election campaign are coming through corrupt means. You saw the latest report from the Auditor General, 5.19 billion rand in local government, and that's only after assessing 170 of the 257 municipalities. So 5.19 billion rand has been wasted because they say either you paid for goods that were never delivered or the jobs were not completed. So you can look at the levels of corruption at local government level alone.
Yes, yeah. What I found quite interesting, and both with the SONA and looking at some of the debates that were presented in terms of responding to the SONA, is a lot of, as you pointed out, a lot of electioneering had taken place because we are in the election year. But what I fail to see is an honest and a factual assessment of the state of the country. And this is what I think you and I and the rest of the country, ordinary people, had expected from the president.
Well, yes, indeed, and from both sides, brother, including the opposition. Opposition have mastered the art of attacking, insulting, abusing, and finding faults on the other. But what they're not doing is looking back at where they are governing and what are the failures there. And I can assure you, if you come to the Western Cape and if you look at the quality of life of the poorest of the poor, the colored and the black communities, the coal and sand, the rightful heirs of the land of this in this country who have never been recognized, that will tell you the state of the country, even where others govern, including, let's go to KwaZulu Natal. What has improved in the lives of the people in KwaZulu Natal? First of all, they don't have any rights to the land that they live on. It belongs to the Ingonyama Trust, right? Despite the court judgment saying that you must cancel those leases and return the monies that you've taken from these people, they have no rights. But we talk about restitution of land elsewhere. So the country has got serious challenges. And I'll give you another good example. Eskom presidents, we are pumping a lot of money into Eskom. But Standard Bank has just made an announcement. They're partnering with another private company to provide more energy than Eskom. So what will happen to Eskom? So President has not touched on he admits that there are mistakes and faults and weaknesses. What he's not telling us, what have we learned from it and what we're going to do differently. Like I've given them an example on starting at local government. What do? Make sure that every month in those municipalities, whatever tenders and procurement has been given, advertise it, who the companies, who the directors are, what is the value, what is the itemized billing, so the community can see whether an examination pad that costs 9.99 or you're paying 999 rand. I've repeatedly requested this, and the Minister of Finance came back to me and tells me, but it is a requirement. I said, but it's a requirement, I know. Are they doing it? He says, no. I said, what are you doing about it? Nothing. So we are not committed to fighting corruption, because I want to tell you honestly, if you stop corruption overnight, particularly all the large political parties will cease to exist. They won't sustain themselves. That's the problem we're sitting with.
Yes, and I think we know that with the SONA, although he reflected on 30 years of the ANC, many of the opposition parties and also political analysts, I might add, said that the president did not talk about his own performance, particularly in the last 5 years. And I read quite an interesting article talking about President Cyril Ramaphosa. In fact, saying that he's sick and tired of all the noise that is being made, and he is a man deeply tired of all the criticism that is leveled against him. And is he equally excited to win another term of office?
Let me come in there. First of all, let us not deny the fact that the country has been deteriorating over a period of time with the previous presidents there as well. I mean, you know what happened even during the days of Guptas and things like that. But more importantly, people forget this. Look at what happened in the year 2000, how we sold all our fleet, all our aircraft, 35 million rand each, 14 aircraft under Thabo Mbeki. We sold it for 35 million each, and then we released it back to us at 44 million. In other words, we gave it for nothing and we gave them 9 million rand each. And who did we give it to? SAF. Who is flying high today? SAF. Where is SA on the ground? So these are some of the things that we are not looking at. Now, the president, I think, in one way, has come in at a difficult time. But yes, there has not been any progress under the president, very limited progress, I can assure you. But at the same time, I want to say this, that while there's been limited progress under the president currently, he cannot be entirely be held responsible. That is why you have a cabinet. That is why you have ministers. The problem is that if you have ministers and deputy ministers that are not fit for purpose, who know very little or nothing on the subject matter where they are supposed to be responsible and providing political insight and guidance, that's where the problem comes in. It's an ANC policy of putting in cadres rather than putting in people that have the ability, capacity, and the integrity to do the job. That is where the problem comes. So it's not a president's problem. It's actually if you remember when the president was first sworn in, that's my first thing I told him. That president, you will be judged by the friends you keep. In your case, you're going to be judged by those you're going to appoint because it's going to be based on the success or failure of the country. And unfortunately, he went and made appointments and nothing has happened, no progress. But the question again we need to ask, why did you make such appointments? President of the country at the moment, as the president of the ANC, is in a very difficult position because of the infighting in the ANC. It makes it very difficult. That is why I believe that when you appoint people, don't even worry about whether they're from your own party. Appoint people that are fit for purpose. But here you have to take people from your own party and you have to appease both factions, because if you don't, the other faction is going to spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, attempting to get rid of you. And that is what is happening in the ANC.
Hmm. Now, here's another question against what the president had to say. Being in an election year, we've seen the responses from opposition parties, including yourself as well, your views. How much confidence does this actually place in the mind of the every citizen, the voter in particular, especially now that we are in an election year?
Well, there's nothing that the president has said, or there is nothing that political parties that are governing wherever they are governing have done to convince the electorate that life is going to be better with a new government. Because who are those that are talking about being another government? And let's look at their performances. And like I've just alluded to, look at the Western Cape. Like I raised the issue. Western Cape is the alcohol city of Cape Town is the alcohol city of the country and has the highest level of diabetes. Is it being addressed? No. They talk about schools in the Western Cape, and I give you a good example. More and more schools are getting shut down. They're not talking about these things. If you look at the number of teenage pregnancies and taverns that are, existing in all these townships, they've done very little or nothing. The attention is more in the affluent area. So, have they got anything to offer? The question is to the electorate. Have they convinced them? No. They may have convinced the white elite, but they have not convinced the non-white. Exactly the same thing. Let's take KwaZulu-Natal. Parties that are governing. EFF is governing with the ANC. And IFP is running a lot of municipalities. Has anything improved? People are still walking 30 years later, 8 kilometers to go and fetch water. The roads are crumbling. The entire infrastructure is crumbling. Nothing is improved. Even on that entire Ngonyama Trust land, there's no development. Yet the provincial legislature appropriates and provides money to the kingdom, but nothing is happening. People have been paying money, it's nothing. So the question is, has anybody, including government, including the ruling party, convinced the electorate, no, things are going to change? No. I don't believe any of them have a plan, because there are things, like I've just said, what any political party that is governing wherever, of identifying the land in the area, just one item I'm talking about, and give it to those people right now that don't have any homes and can't afford them. Just give them the land and see what they will do with it. Why can't you do that? You don't want to do it because you want them to be vulnerable and dependent on you, so they'll come back voting for you. This is what it is all about. And if you talk about corruption, which all the opposition parties have been raising in the state of the nation, but nobody is talking about the corruption in their own areas where they are governing. Look at in the KZN, how many municipalities, how many arrests they have been made, how many of them not have never received an unqualified or clean audit. Look at the irregular expenditure, the wasteful expenditure. Look at the city of Cape Town on the housing scheme, gone into billions now. Okay, that's being investigated over. So it's easy to come up just and attack the ANC. And yes, the ANC has not put any measures, and I don't believe they are serious about dealing with the issue of corruption. So I don't believe any of these political parties have convinced the electorate that they're going to offer anything different to the citizens of this country, to socially uplift our people and enhance their quality of life. I mean, I give you a good example: job creation. Has anybody told you what they're going to do to create the job, while your manufacturing industry is just being shut down with everything being imported? Nobody is talking about that. You've got rural development. What are these municipalities doing about becoming self-sufficient? Give you a good example. Let's go to Germany. What do you think BMW have done? The municipalities have invested in BMW, and the returns from that money they used to develop. Why can't Iteguini municipality have done that with of Toyota when engine was there, Sapref, all these big industries, so that you can have anybody spoken about taking away giving the wealth back to the people in this country, the minerals? Has anybody ever spoken about that? South Africans are getting the crumbs while private sector is enjoying the fruits and the benefit, and the West is enjoying it. I'm saying, why can't you make it 50-50? Privatize, it's a public-private partnership. Let the private sector run the mines, but let 50% of that profit go to uplifting our people. Why can't we do that?
I think also what is important to understand is, in the absence of the lack of delivery on the part of many of these political parties that we speak of, and also at the same time instilling confidence. Are we now ripe for a new political thinking, new political parties? Because at this point in time, and the reason why I'm saying this is, there are many communities, there are sections of communities who don't have a political home, that are looking for a political home that they can say with confidence that, this is a party I would like to vote for these reasons. And it's also interesting that on the 1st of March in Durban, Salam Media, together with Kanita Hunter, who's written a book, Who Will Rule South Africa? We've got a panel discussion, and it's going to be quite interesting, because we know that certain sections of the community are targeted. The Muslim community has been targeted. It's a lucrative vote. But at this point in time, you in a limbo, you don't know where you stand politically. You're trying to find a political home.
Well, let me start off by saying what I think is very important. This is a mother of all elections. We are at a crossroads, particularly for members of the Ummah, the Muslim community in South Africa. Your religious freedom is at risk. Even on the issue of Palestine, many political parties have been trying to capitalize on what is happening, on the pain and suffering of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. There are political parties that have never supported any of the motions, like the Good Party, never did it. They deliberately stepped out just when it was the time to speak and just when it was time to vote. But now you find them in the rallies. But very importantly, we always knew even the ICJ is not even going to get, make a ruling that is going to be effective. And as we saw, it was a very soft judgment. We know that Israel, the Zionist state of Israel, will ignore it. We have passed a motion. Why have we not implemented? What was the purpose of passing the motion of shutting down the embassy if we had no intention of implementing it? Okay. Now, these are just some of the things that we need to look at. But what is very important, our people need to look at deep inside political parties to identify leaders that they believe that can take the country forward, but more importantly, protect our religious freedom and protect the minorities in this country, and in this case, particularly members of the Ummah. Now, remember, political parties are governed by the principles and policies of their parties. Individuals are very limited in what they can do. That is why you need to identify those. And I want to say this again. We have a lot of capacity, integrity, people that are passionate, that are not part of politics at the moment. We need to identify them, brother Inayat, bring them on board and create this formidable force of an alternative political party that will conduct themselves to the highest levels of ethics, morals, and values on Islamic ethos and principles that will not be able to be bought off by the Zionists or anybody at all. Now, if you can have an organization of that nature, I think then we have hope for this country. Otherwise, I can tell you the poor will continue to get poorer, the rich will get richer in this country, and our risks of religious freedom at the moment, with what is happening even with the infighting in the ruling party, they are about to hand over this beautiful country on a silver platter to the Zionist state of Israel and the West to control it. You saw what happened in the Western Cape as far as the land. They're even pawning the land to get monies from the West. You can see how the Jewish communities are moving. You can see already the draconian laws that they are putting in place. Your freedom of speech is restricted. Your freedom of movement is restricted. Where are we heading? What are we going to do about it? And my plea to our brothers and sisters here is, the people that can make a difference. The people in the communities that have what it takes to be able to deliver to our people, protect our rights here. Identify them, bring them forward, let us then be part and parcel of the solution so that we can protect our own interests, inshallah.
Well, inshallah, Jazakallah khairan so much. I know you and I can talk for the next 20 minutes or so, but unfortunately, time is of the essence. But Ahmed Munzoor Shaik Emam, Jazakallah khairan so much, as always, for your time. Have yourself a wonderful Jummah ahead.
Jazakallah and Jummah Mubarak once again to all our brothers and sisters. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Founding member of the National Freedom Party, Ahmed Munzoor Shaik Emam, with us, dynamic as ever, alhamdulillah. Wonderful engaging with him on the airwaves of Salam Media this morning. The time is just gone, 8:39. We've got Ashraf Patel standing by. The ICJ case in South Africa's AGOA deal in jeopardy.